Hey, vinyl fans, welcome to another episode of Let's Clean a Record. If you're a longtime audiophile like me, you'll know exactly what this is. This is Analog Productions, UHQR, which is an acronym for Ultra High Quality Record. This is the latest. Bill Evans' trio, Waltz for Debbie. They also released at the same time the companion album to this, Sunday at the Village Vanguard. UHQRs from Analog Productions, I think, are widely seen as some of the best sounding records ever made. We have, I believe, 6 in-house, and they are definitely among the best sounding records that we have. In fact, Steely Dan Gaucho, I might rank it the single best sounding record that we own. So I've always been a big fan, and I'm even a bigger fan of Bill Evans. I've had, in fact, a different Analog Productions reissue of this record for quite some time. This was released in 1992. It was mastered by Doug Sax, and for a long time, many people would consider this, that was the best one. If you didn't have the original mono pressing or something like that, this was the best reissue. And then some years later, I want to say it was 1997, Analog Productions issued a 45 RPM box set. I believe there were 11 records in it, mastered by the great Steve Hoffman. And many people said the cover of Waltz for Debbie actually bettered this one from 1992. Fast forward to 2023, Kraft Records reissued Waltz for Debbie. Kevin Gray, who did the mastering, and at least Michael Fremer said that was the best one yet. So 3 or 4 days ago, when this one showed up, well, frankly, I expected to blow away my old copy. But that didn't happen. For the first time in my listening career, I found an Analog Productions UHQR pressing to be inferior to what I had previously. It's true that the UHQR had a dead silent background, as we would expect from those pressings. The tonality of the instruments were beautiful, but it just didn't come together. Either from a hi-fi perspective, it felt like panned left hard, panned hard right, very, very hard, no fill in the middle whatsoever. And just from a subjective perspective, it just wasn't transportive. It wasn't musical, at least compared to the 92 reissue that I have loved for so long. It wasn't even close. And I'm so surprised by that, I can't tell you. So if you are like me and have always read that the UHQR are the best out there, well, that may no longer be the case. Maybe we got a bad one. I'm not sure. We're going to clean these records thoroughly using the Kirmuss process. In fact, we're going to demonstrate how you can clean more than one record at a time using the Kirmuss ultrasonic machine. So that should be helpful in and of itself. But once we do that, we'll give it a fresh listen and tell you what we think. Let's get to it. Let's get to cleaning these records. Well, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit frazzled. I was 100% sure that this new UHQR pressing was going to just blow me away, as have all the previous UHQR pressings that I've ever listened to or read about. And as we just mentioned, that just wasn't the case. But we'll get out of that headspace, because what we're going to focus on here is cleaning multiple records with the Kirmuss restoration process and kind of getting the cycle going. So while one is in the machine, we're applying the ionizing spray on the other. You can do that. There really isn't much of a fear of this machine overheating. Of course, if you did, dozens and dozens of records, it would eventually get too hot. If that happens, take the lid off and hit the degasser again. That will help cool it down. And if it really gets too hot, you can dump the water and put fresh distilled water in there. And of course, that'll bring the temperature down immediately. We're only doing 3 records, so there's no fear of overheating. We've got fresh distilled water in the tank, 40 milliliters of 70% isopropyl alcohol. It's been degassed several times. All of our microfiber cloths and goat hair brushes and everything have been cleaned. And we pre-cleaned the records just with a dry carbon fiber brush. So we are ready to get going on this. Let's do it. Because these records are in very good condition, obviously the UHQR is brand new. The 1992 reissue I have kept in immaculate condition. The preferred process is to start with a 3-minute cycle with no ionizing spray, and then follow up with a series of 2-minute cycles, and then lastly 1 5-minute cycle. When we get into old records, if you've seen our previous episodes, you'll know that it's better to do 5-minute cycles. But that's the idea. We'll get 3 minutes on one record. As soon as it comes out, I'll put in the second record, and in that 3-minute period, apply the ionizing spray and try to get a nice cycle going here. Okay, let's get to it. First thing you want to do before we just put the next record in and really to judge what we're dealing with here is look at the amount of water sheeting and bubbles. Specks of water. What's the word I'm looking for?
Specks works for me. Droplets?
Droplets is the right word. The number and size of droplets. What I'm seeing here tells me that this record is older, and it was issued in 1992, but it never really got that dirty, and it never had anything applied to it, any treatments, no last or anything like that. So this is about what I would have expected to see. So what we'll do is, let's go ahead and set this down. And while I dab off that excess water and apply the ionizing spray, we'll get side 1 and 2 of the UHQR going. Also an initial 3-minute run. We'll get the excess water off on side 1 and side 2 and apply the ionizing spray. We'll get side 3 and 4 in for its initial 3-minute cycle. Okay, again, just what we would expect. Good news. So, while we're prepping the last disc, let's get the ones we've already prepped into their first 2-minute cycle. That is with the ionizing spray on. Okay, so our first 2 records have their initial 2-minute cycle. So we'll keep things consistent. This was the first in, so we'll work on that next. Set it aside. Set that aside. And let's get on this one. Dab that water off. Okay, this will be the second 2-minute cycle for that one, and the first for this. You know, if you lose track as to how many cycles you've gone through, don't worry about that too much. You really want to let the appearance of the number of droplets of water, their size, and how much sheeting of water is going on to be your guide. Just in case you're new to the Kirmuss process, note that we're using this goat hair brush with the ionizing spray not to clean the record, but to evenly apply the spray so as to create a static charge that is opposite from that which is in the tank. That allows the cavitation process to get far deeper into the groove and get out the nasty bits. I find a kind of circular motion as a last step makes sure everything is evenly spread. Okay, this one is ready to go, but we'll set it aside. So now we've got 2 ready to go back in for their next 2-minute cycles. Let's get them both in and then we'll hit the go button. You know, it dawned on me as I was going through this process, it might be nice to have 2 dish racks. One to put the wet record as it's come out of the ultrasonic, and the other in which you can insert those that have had the ionizing spray applied and are ready to go back into the machine. We don't have that right now, but that's a good thought, I think. Okay. If you establish regular patterns, it will help in this process. For instance, it's always a good idea to set down side 1 first, to clean side 1 first. Or in the case of our 45 RPM record here, side 1 and then side 3 first. You get into it, it's not uncommon to forget, did I clean that side? Okay, we now have 2 with the ionizing spray ready to go, so in for their next 2-minute cycle. First thing I want to do is look at this. This was the first one we put in. I think one more 2-minute cycle before we hit it with the final 5-minute run. We'll set this one aside. This is side 1 and 2. Let's spread it out. Okay, we have 2 more. What I think will be the final 2-minute cycle of this one, and likely of side 3 and 4 here. Yes, we are ready for all 3 records to get their final 5-minute cycle. And we might as well do all of those at once, as we're just going to tackle 3 today. If you had more, you could continue to stagger how you put these in and prep them for cleaning. If you see a little water bead there, go ahead and pick that up. You don't want to dilute the spray any more than it already is. It's only 1 or 2% active ingredient. The rest is distilled water, just like what's in the tank. All 3 12-inch slots occupied. There we go. Should have defaulted to 5 minutes. It did. Okay, there is one final step in the process, but we're finished with the ultrasonic machine for now, and you can see the heat level is just 1 bar above as cold as it gets. No problem with overheating, and I think it works well to have multiple records going at the same time. So certainly an option for you. What we'll do here is get these guys out. I'll set a couple of the wet ones aside. And as the final step, we're going to dry it with the optician's cloth. With that little bit of alcohol mixed in with the water, and the way this product works, there's no problem doing it this way. Now we want to polish the groove. Ditto for side 2. And then just a very light, you'll see no rise of any colorant, none of that milky gray material here. We're just taking off any static electricity. Just like that. Wow. That is one clean record. Okay, I will set this one aside. We'll finish the other two. Okay. This optician's cloth really does a fantastic job of removing any water that remains after your last pass through the ultrasonic. All three records, clean as could be. Full restoration process. I think that worked beautifully. I look forward to doing more sessions where we're cleaning multiple records with the Kirmuss machine. Okay, back to our dilemma. Got a clear mind, clear conscience, clear ears. Let's go and test these two records out again and give you our full unbiased response to what we think of them. UHQR versus the 1992 reissue, both from Analog Productions. We'll be back to you shortly. Okay, final thoughts and for the record, we just finished listening to this wonderful recording. And first I want to say, if you're an old jazz guy like me, you'll know this record. But I would say this is perhaps the best record for an introduction to jazz. It's very accessible and also darn near perfect.
It's dreamy. I was waiting for the right word.
It is dreamy. As far as the cleaning process is concerned, it did a great job, and one would expect that. We really are fans of the full restoration process from the Kirmuss machines and did a great job. It was actually better than I recall a few nights ago. A lower noise floor. Not that there's any noise, pops and ticks on a UHQR pressing, but beautiful job cleaning the record. Can't say enough about that. Well, I listened to it again, and here's the conclusion I've come to. The UHQR pressing, this one right here, is superior from a fidelity perspective. If you want to be able to guess what kind of snare drum head was being used, then you'll probably hear it a little clearer. The way that Scott LaFaro's fingers are plucking the bass strings is more realistic. So I guess I would have to say this is truer to the original recording. And isn't that what being an audiophile is all about? So perhaps I was a little overly harsh about it in our introduction. That said, years ago, I worked in New York City. We had an office in Midtown, one downtown at 100 William Street, and I have been to the Village Vanguard many, many, many times and heard all kinds of acts there. I felt with this recording that I was there. It felt more transportive, if that's a word that can be used here. Not that it was so much more intimate, but just more realistic. It had that quality of sort of a wide mono feel, which is really what you hear when you hear live music, right? It's unlike, for instance, the UHQR of the Steely Dan recordings, Asia and Gaucho and the others that were put out in this format, where every single instrument, heck, every drum was separately mic'd and then all mixed together after the process. Phenomenal sound, no doubt about it, but that's not what you hear live. This is a live recording. This was done with a mic on one of those little tables in the audience. I suspect it was recorded to a Nagra portable deck, that kind of thing. This just sounds more like you're there. And then the other thing I would say is that sort of wide mono feel is not what I get with the UHQR. It tends to be separate. It feels like half the music's coming out of one speaker and half out of the other. Certainly the piano's on the right, the drums are on the left with the earlier reissue, but it just feels more real to me. So Better for high fidelity, better for touching your soul. That's the way I'm going to say it. Hope that works for you, fellas. We'll see you at the next record.